Hello. Welcome to the second CFF live stream. I am Justin Cloud, the Executive Director of the Cloud Family Foundation. Welcome again. We're a nonprofit providing scholarships to college students, graduate and undergraduate, and grants to elementary schools. In 2021, we gave 3 $1,000 scholarships, and the grant program provided $300 to an elementary school teacher here in Florida. And another $200 in North Carolina A&T gear to a teacher in Maryland. Her purpose was to display HBCUs in the classroom. In 2022, we have a goal of 5 scholarships and 7 to 10 laptops donated for elementary schools. It's important that you donate. It is 100% tax deductible, and I'll send you the form so that way when you do your taxes, you have that information. Please look at the cff-inc.org/donate to give to this worthy cause. A couple of housekeeping items. Please ask questions. Use the chat feature available. We'll be happy to answer them. Tonight we have Mr. Mack Renard of Lockheed Martin, an engineering and technology leader, diversity, equity, and inclusion leader, and a dear longtime friend. Well, everybody with me, help me welcome Mr. Mack Renard. Hey, Mack, how you doing? Pretty good. I'm glad. I appreciate you being able to do this for us. You know, I know we talked about this quite some time ago, and ultimately, your background in diversity and inclusion, I think, is going to be really important to this discussion. So I want to give you a couple seconds. Talk about who you are. We'll jump into the back and forth in terms of questions. But like I said, I at least want to give you an opportunity to give a little bit of your background, especially with your time with Lockheed Martin.
Absolutely. I have to go to caveat with that concept of inclusion. We go way back. I know we had a lot of interaction within the inclusion. We're kind of very passionate about it, but I'm not, they're not passionate with kind of catch that, but I've done that conversation.
I will tell you, I'm getting a little bit of feedback on you now, so it was clear a minute ago. Did you do something? I'm getting a little bit of feedback on you now at this point in time, so hopefully we could clear that up. Well, it was clear a moment ago, and like I said, it's a little bit muffled now compared to where it was maybe about 30 seconds before we joined the call. And you're completely on mute. I will say it looks like we're at least 5 people right now. I see I've caught a couple of people that are joining us. I know you're working on that, and I appreciate you trying to figure that out. How's your sounding now?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think so. Let's give that a shot.
Let's give it a shot.
All right. Well, we won't make it work tonight because that's what we do, and I apologize. So you were giving us a little bit about your background. You weren't saying anything about how you knew me, but you were giving us a little bit about your background.
Okay. You know, that just one of the people who came attention. Actually was one of the managers along with them actually money. We're good. So we found all together. We've done Lockheed Martin. My background is training on levels of technology, authority, also Lockheed Martin. Currently principal, working with them on digital transformation. So my responsibility is digital engineering is part of the whole thing right now. Because of the whole prospect of
I think I'm hearing you. I'm not seeing anybody saying anything negative on the I am chat. I'll keep kind of monitoring of that, but like I said, I know Unfortunately, I see Royals on there as well. I was wondering but yeah, no, I appreciate the background. Yes, we go a long way back. I wanted to leave that out unless you decided to bring that up. But well, it's funny because when I did this with Rich, Rich and I kind of did like a pre-planning meeting, and he's like, Justin, can I talk about this? Can I talk about that? I'm like, no. I'm like, we're not going to do that in this conversation. So he wanted to try to talk about the 305, and I'm like, we're not going to do that here.
No, I understand.
So, obviously this topic is really focused around diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And for many people, they think that it may be one thing, diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's really three different things. Can you kind of talk about the differences here, just so people can get a better understanding of the differences between the three?
Well, and you're absolutely right. It's three different things, but you've got most organizations. There's many areas, right? I think diversity and inclusion, diversity was kind of the first initial thing that any thought that they want to happen, right? The mix of people come back, generation, different social background. This is about getting people from different environments, from different cultures into the business. But the diversity was all about the period of, affinity, background people together. Inclusion became because, we were getting a lot of people from different backgrounds, right? Kind of mixing those up. But there was most of them when they get to the company, so it's about making the diversity was kind of that fixed that mix, whereas inclusion was more so about making it difficult for actually part of the place. And that's what we want that because recruits are fun with that. It's a very hard time. It's also a very fun goal. Any group that can be a little very hard to achieve. We don't let them up. Empathy, focus on empathy, is a very good understanding and alternate that not everybody starts off on the right foot. Not a fair point, not everybody starts off. So it's not the filter that social economic that puts people in certain circumstances. I was the empathy also about my class, not quality. Quality is what you want to achieve, but now that you have, is the only one that can given the ability to have the right burden that way everyone can start
and I think that's excellent, right? Because we talk about diversity and just bringing people from different backgrounds together, right? That's the diversity, right? When we even look at that when we were doing hiring together, we were bringing in diverse populations of individuals, right, across the spectrum, whether it was African American, whether it was Hispanic, what have you. That was the initial part, bringing those individuals together. Were they at the same foothold? Were they coming from the exact same part? That's the equity part, making sure that they have the exact same opportunity to be successful. And then the inclusion, right, making sure that they have the seat at the table, right? It's not just, okay, we brought the people in, great, we've done our job, but they have to have the ability to be successful, and they have to be able to have a seat at the table. And I think that's really where you were gearing those comments to. So I just wanted to reiterate the points you were making. And if I was off by any stretch of the imagination, please correct me, but I sense that's where you were going with the commentary.
No, yeah, absolutely right. I mean, like, we get people in, give them a voice, and you're sure that we're giving everybody an opportunity.
I don't know if we had a choice, right? You know, we had a leader that was saying, "Thou shalt fix this problem," which I mentioned him on the last call as well. I'm not going to do it two calls in a row, but yeah, he was like, yeah, "Thou shalt fix this problem," and you and I went off and did our best job possible to go fix it and bring it in as diversity talent. So you know, I'll try not to call him out because I don't want to call him out in every single one I do with these. But if he's listening, I know he knows I'm talking about him. So, you know, when we talk about just corporations in general, right? We talk about DE&I at all levels, new grad, experienced professionals. What makes a good culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? How does it mean, you know, that the switch is on and DE&I is working, right? So what makes a good culture of DE&I?
So, I'm going to try to DE&I professionals and do this. From the whole thing about the 2 hours a day, I don't want to do justice. But when I think about the right culture, look at us and there are inequity. How you, there are biases, a lot of things that happen in culture that anybody is particularly have to deliver about gaining culture that you want to make about making them do it. I have experiences where we have had even stood up, making sure we're finding, you know, talent, and down to you easily see it, right? Also on diversity and nature, you know, who's actually taking on their name, nurturing, letting them, right? Those are some of those, you know, that aspect, that in going to happen, like, those aspects, those are things that you have to you can't be like, oh, when you're doing something, you'll show vision, and vision will have to because, and like I said, my culture is especially outcome is delivered about creating that. Everybody feels like everybody feels like they're not valued, right? For example, you look around, they will do all of other things. Look to make sure that players are here. And then also want to reflect. And again, that goes right back to the very deliberate maturity that's the workforce.
Well, it's funny, right? Because, you know, you talk about being deliberate, and yes, it's a little bit of feedback, but I'm assuming that everybody is okay because I haven't seen any commentary. If anybody's having problems here on Mac or myself, please let me know. We'll try to adjust here. But the one thing you talk about is being deliberate, right? You know, I love using that term because I hear all the time when I look at LinkedIn and I look at different types of communication, it's show me the receipts. What are you doing, right? It's one thing to say we are a diverse organization. Show me the receipts. How are you proving to me that you're doing that? Is it, you know, because like I said, we talk about, you know, new college grads, right? And that seems to be the easiest thing to impact initially, right? But as you look at the different layers of the organization, how much better is it at the senior level, the executive level? Is that really being impacted by a deliberate activity that's being done within the culture? Go ahead, give it a shot. Let's see how you sound.
Yeah, you see, I'm trying to pick up.
Well, so it's not bad. It just there's breaks in it now and then. Almost. Did you just change the settings just now?
I changed the settings right now.
Okay, so let's leave that where you are right now because it actually sounds really clear like right now. Okay. So let's leave it at that. Yeah, leave it at right now. And everybody out there, if you're having any trouble, let me know. We're trying to make sure that we have the right settings for you, but it sounds really good now. So we talk about it sounds really clear. So when we look back, what are some of the initiatives that maybe you've championed in your time, right? You know, we talk about the interns and new college, but were there some things that you championed as a leader to make sure that that we really were putting our money where our mouth is?
Gotcha. Well, you know what? And I'll say from a champion perspective, I would say empowerment. I was empowered. Lots of different things, specifically with council at Lockheed Martin. But, you know, one thing that I think stands out and was very important to me was when I was a software engineering consultant, I had the opportunity, and I think you used to be right, where we're always hiring, you go to Lockheed Martin, or you go to any conventional site, hundreds if not thousands of threats, being unfilled for war for talent. You know, we have talent transfer report, a lot of things, but my software engineering, we have hired me to really go out there, go out, go to conferences, go to like the minority studies, and really, you know, figure out how we can unite our people, like we are hiring,
right?
And ensure that we have enough space on our hiring, bring on as many, all these different universities to go from an engineer. It wasn't a matter of, hey, I want to be diverse, you know, here's some members, you know, I'll allocate 5. No, we have a lot of jobs, but we still have a lot of stuff. How can you help us? And we just like the same person, you know, I was passionate about it, to go out there and get it. That's where, you know, being able to support MES, being able to support the mechanical engineers, working around for the college engineering, right? That actually. Being able to go out to, you know, news, I've done front end, begrudgingly out there, what that I mean.
Not begrudgingly, why are you saying begrudgingly? Go ahead and say it, man. Add your pride, go ahead and say it.
You know what, I feel like on the line, you know, being able to deal with you, was awesome, you know, with FIU, go out with talent, and bring them back. You know, that was a labor of love. And we were there with a lot of travel, with you know, leading work, you know, driving down to my flying, you know, flying going on to these, doing tech talk. It was a big level of love. We really did a big relationship with the big relationship with the listeners. We were able to know how that worked. Translated into, you know, new eyes, new people who are now interested in working with Martin. And they came together. It was very different. Maybe I think before, when it's been kind of the one confused to go out to the universities and go out to one agency or two. Once the students get here again, they become a lot more employees. Sometimes they have a very difficult time with them. And one thing that helped me is kind of finding that family, finding the family of family. You know, coming back, maybe it's in life as well, we can talk about that. When we started getting more people, very diverse, they come in, they start connecting each other, they start to build their own family. I think that led to a positive culture where everything can grow, and, you know, students go, you know, continue to do that.
So I'm seeing a message from Cassandra Parker on my LinkedIn. I just doing a quick sound check. I'm hearing Mac a bit better. Is everybody hearing Mac okay? Just want to do a quick thumbs up. I did see Imani, Jorge, Lisa say they were getting a little bit better sound, but I just wanted to do a double check really quickly, so that way we proceeded with good auditory. I will say, I'll make the point that, you know, when you talk about that, right, it's building that culture within, right? You talked about those individuals not just expecting leadership to build the culture, but that subculture within those individuals that were brought in and then essentially created their own family within the organization. And we even see that at L3 Harris right now. I'll be quite transparent. You bring people in, either maybe they went to the same school, right, and they didn't know each other while they were at the school together, but then they realized they had that camaraderie by being at L3 Harris together. And so it seems like you might be trying to change devices here. The one thing I'll say is maybe you can use your phone too. I think that's what Rich did. Okay, so I will give that a try. So my niece, my highly educated and technical niece is telling me to mute when you talk. So I will give that a try. Okay. So let's do this. Next question.
Lisa is very cool.
Well, yeah, because you hired her, Let's be real. She is of my family, so of course she's going to be good. But what is the biggest myth that you can think about regarding DE&I?
I mean, this is the obvious one, right? I kind of spoke about it when we talked about initiatives. I would say that one of the biggest myths is kind of like the whole quota thing, right? Just like, hey, we're doing this to reach a quota. And the reason I say that's a huge myth, because just imagine if you had an annual quota, and you met it, and then what, right? One, who's driving the quota? That's one thing. But then two, and then what? What happens after you've gotten somebody in, right? Who's now, if it's a mandated thing, who's now responsible for assimilating, the people? Who is now responsible for the equity and providing, all that? Just think everything around it. I think there's a huge myth around it. I think some people, and when I say some, this could be anybody, right? There's gender biases that are out there. There are, generational ones that are out there. Folks often feel like when you hear DE&I, something is being taken away from you, right? Something that I have that belongs to me, or that would have been mine, now has to be given to somebody else because some crazy initiative that a corporation or an organization is coming is thinking about pushing. And I think that that is truly a myth. If that were the case, you would lose very good people, right? If you weren't looking at merit, if you weren't looking at performance, if you weren't looking at qualifications, you would lose really good people. So I tend to push back anytime I hear folks talk about that, say that. It seems very I would say I understand it, right? Because there is a focus on you might have went through your entire life, or you might have went through your professional career not hearing some of these things. So it might seem foreign to you. It might seem like, hey, wait a second, I'm no longer part of the plan, even though I'm the best engineer, I'm the best finance person that's out there. I think I understand, I empathize, but it's a myth, right? These are things that we do to not only help ourselves, help our business. We're helping the communities that we operate in, and that's kind of, like I said, where I push back. That DE&I, any focus on it, is taking away from another particular group. It's more so just about broadening your aperture, right? Getting more talent, getting more, making more people feel included, supporting more people, right? Sometimes when we talk about these universities that we're going in, these are underserved universities, right? That's even from a financial perspective. We are, not even saying, hey, you're on the hook to give us college graduates. No, we are, and other corporations are as well, able to support these organizations who are now developing a pipeline for the world, right? For humans to be able to succeed. And I think at the end of it, it's a good thing for all.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about that is that when you look at what diversity is, there's a lot of emphasis on HBCUs overall in general right now. And I have to, I guess in some regards, give you responsibility for me being the chairperson of the ERG at L3 Harris now, because the way that happened when we were, way back when. But it's very evident now, especially in the times that we're in, that there is an increased focus on diversity hiring at HBCUs, diversity hiring at Hispanic serving institutions, and we talk about it. And the great thing is we're seeing that some of these big companies are now providing funding, right? That's the one thing. If you listen to Dean Koger, who is at North Carolina A&T, the one thing Dean says, and she says it all the time, right? So if she happens to listen to this broadcast, that's also great. She says, don't just take the students. Leave something back here for the next student to be able to grow from. And so I think that was really evident in the fact that these companies, Lockheed, L3Harris, Raytheon, the big six, even more so, are focusing on partnering, giving IRAD dollars, making sure that there's opportunities for students at those universities to grow and not just, hire them to meet quotas, but grow them in a way that they are prepared to walk in the industry and be ready to do great things. So I appreciate that. Everybody seems to be really happy with the sound of the communication now. So my loving niece, I am going to keep going on mute as I ask questions. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about not just D&I from a company perspective. What are your thoughts about some of the conferences out there, some of the awards? BEA comes to mind, being able to do training. Do those things you feel really help impact individuals in the workforce from a DE&I perspective?
Absolutely think they help. Almost every single conference that I've attended, you see value there. Everyone that I've attended, I know for a fact I've come back into the workplace and I've been re-energized. And usually the energy not only goes back to me as a professional saying, hey, next year I want to be on that stage, or 20 years from now I want to get the Linda Gooden or the Stephanie Hill, or one of those. You see these inspiring people and you're like, hey, if I do my job, do it very well, make a huge impact, give back to my community, maybe I can get that award one day. So I think it's I come back from those energized. But from a student perspective, right? And I told Corey, colleague of mine as well, right? And I remember we first went to BEA as recruiters, and BEA, up until that point, and this is just my understanding, was a really big thing in the mid-east, area, the Washington D.C. area. It was in Baltimore actually when we attended my first one. But he had known about it. I had never heard about it. I'm from Miami, as I mentioned. I went to school in Tallahassee. Unfortunately, I hadn't heard about it while I was in Tallahassee, but there was really no venue or no avenue to see engineers be celebrated, right? Where I'm from in Miami, the athletes, the rappers, those are the folks that are glorified. If you happen to do something outside the realm of that, it becomes successful, 2 thumbs up. But it wasn't really celebrated. And I sat there and I went through, sometimes it gets a little boring, but I sat through the entire BEA gala. And I told him, similar to like a NESB, the award, I sat there and I was just like, more kids have to see this. More high school kids have to see this, because it was a production. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, and it was celebrating something other than the arts that we're typically, or the sports that we're typically gravitated towards, because that seems like the most exciting thing to do. So there's a lot of value there, just from an inspiration standpoint, from a feeling energized standpoint, a lot of professional development. But to me, it's always the students that you just get to meet, bright-eyed, great ideas. They're just it's kind of just bringing you from everywhere, putting them all together and allowing you to have these conversations, to talk about what you do as a professional, to talk about what they're interested in doing. They have options, which is the best thing. I used to call myself like an anti-recruiter, because I would tell them to talk to every single company. You're going to come back to Lockheed Martin. I know for a fact that you're going to end up coming back here, but I wanted every student to talk to as many as possible, because that was the most exciting thing, to know that, hey, there are options. Yeah, you go from wondering if somebody wants you to hearing 10, 20 different companies that want you. So I really enjoy just engaging with the students, talking to them, and see and seeing how much value there were on recruiting floor. One of my mentees, and I have a couple of them, but one of my mentees, we make fun. I kind of make fun of her every now and then. It was just her birthday yesterday, so happy birthday. But when we started going towards that same day offer, I still remember, and I know that initiative, and a lot of organizations do it now. But being able to have a conversation on the recruitment floor, conduct an interview as a manager, and give them a call back and say, hey, I'd like to give you an offer. That's one of the best feelings. And the reason I brought her up, I still remember her. She just didn't believe me. She thought I was lying. I don't know who's lied to her before, but I just remember her. Are you kidding me? No, you're just joking. And I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know if it's because she was just that in shock. But I remember that first opportunity to give someone an offer on the floor. She's still a Lockheed Martin software engineer, superstar. That was a great feeling for me, and I know we continue to do it. And I will continue to support these conferences. I think there's a lot of value in them. And I also challenge anybody who hasn't been to them, or if you've been to kind of like you've only been to like a NSBE one every single year, or a BEA or SWE or Grace Hopper, I challenge you to go to one that you haven't been to. Given the offer to the young lady at the NSBE conference, while that was one of the, I guess, better experiences that I've had, because it just felt good, and we've given more offers since then. I remember attending. I think it's I'm going to butcher the name, but it was like the Association of maybe. Pacific American or Asian American. There were a couple, but I know one of the biggest cadres within that conference focused on Native Americans, so Indigenous Americans, and I attended a powwow, and I don't know if you've attended a powwow before, but from a culture perspective, I walked into that conference thinking I'm as diverse as it gets. Right, I'm Haitian American, family in Dominican Republic, family in Haiti, family all over, Black from Miami, got two sides of me, right? You got the Miami side and you got professional Mack side. I felt like I was very diverse. And I remember going to that powwow and seeing people who, their experience, just the conversations, what they valued being so much more different than what I, at the time, thought was the most important. Seeing the spirituality and understanding the history of Native Americans, and seeing that there's Native Americans trying to be engineers, and they're all here at this conference, and I have a chance to talk to them. That was a very moving experience for me. So I would strongly recommend, if you haven't been to a conference that's just completely different than kind of the affinity or the culture group that you fall in, I if you get that offer, I'd take that offer and check it out.
And for me, it was HENAC, right? HENAC was that conference, right? And so I remember going out there, and Jorge, who actually I met, I can't remember if I met him at HENAC or if I met him, at FIU, but he's on the call. We have some other people that are on the call that went to HENAC. But you're right? I had been used to the NSBE experience, right? I grew up the NSBE experience. I didn't know BEA myself until it was like 2 or 3 years before, I left, right? I didn't know about it until, how big it was. Now, granted, I walk in the doors to a different company. Now we are focused on that as well, as long as, in addition to a lot of BEA awards and the like. But yeah, it takes a deliberate approach going back to that statement. And interesting enough, one of my engineers that I hired from BEA is on IM, and it was funny because I did a Justin, right? I think we were by the bar or something along that line. It was a bunch of them talking together, and I think I remember saying, okay, we're going to hire you, right? It's time to go do that. It's time to come to work. And even I joke, but that first year, I remember Rena still saying to me, "Can you still recruit for us, even though you're not with us no more?" I was like, "No, that's not going to happen this time." But it was still even that experience of talking to individuals. They were from Grambling, another school that doesn't get the visibility, especially in engineering, that it really should. And so there was a lot of effort brought into that. So and she's already IMing, she's on the chat as well. But I think there's a additional set of work that needs to be done that's beyond the known HBCUs. To your point, the known conferences. There's a lot more conferences out there than the big ones that we talk about, the BEA and the NSBE, the like. that really show how we can bring individuals into the fold. So I appreciate that comment. Not only from that, and like I said, HENAC, again, I had one of the best times in my life going to HENAC, right? So I think there's still pictures of that all over the web and everything else. So we had a great time with that. Do you feel that you've, and I know this is kind of I expect you to answer this firmly. Do you feel you've been able to personally impact DE&I for people of different backgrounds, right? And I want to make sure I say different backgrounds because, it's obviously the implied black, right, when we call a person of color. I know, and I want to make sure that we talk about more than that. But do you feel that you've been able to impact people of different diversity, of different backgrounds, and how so, or how have you been able to do that?
So I'd say I feel like I have. I do know that we can always do better. I know I can do better. I know there's a lot more work to do. But again, back to that, we're gonna make the callbacks to our origin. When we first started talking, and it was about just being deliberate about seeing change or just making change that I wanted to see. I did not. I was so, let me go back to the previous question. With industry awards, there's typically a call for awards. And the call for awards for those industry awards, there's this type of black engineer or woman of color. There's typically this call, and when you're a manager, you see these things come across your place, and rewards and recognition is one of the biggest things. Anybody who has any sort of survey that they put out to employees, they'll notice that that's one of the biggest things that we can always do better, and you can never not provide rewards and recognitions to your employees. I remember one year feeling like, hey, this was about people of color, women, specifically in the organization that I was in at the time. And I didn't see that many women. It wasn't that I didn't see that many qualified women. I didn't even see that many women women of color that can fit into this mold. And that was just something that, I didn't say, hey, now I need a quote. I need to have this many. I just said, no. Why don't we have, like, what is the problem here? Are we just not graduating that many? Do I need to, go to these, universities, these organizations that are geared towards that and maybe, help, right? Do some tech talks, do some mentoring, resume reviews. What could I have done? And that's what I decided to do. When I started to see that there were gaps in areas that I had I had the authority to make that change. I can go to these conferences and, look for resumes, right? Bring in more resumes, right? It's not about, we didn't tear up resumes to consider these folks. We were bringing in more resumes. We were bringing in resumes to folks who didn't even know about Lockheed Martin, right? They probably, scope could have been limited. This is all you saw. These are the only universities that came to your school. I mean, these are the only companies that came to your school. So you didn't even know about Lockheed Martin. So being able to just broaden the aperture, go to these conferences, and I apologize, it's called ACES. I didn't know the acronym was American Indian Science and Engineering Society. They have a conference every single year. This year it's in Phoenix. But saying, hey, I want to be a hiring manager. I want to be able to, one, hire folks. I have open recs, and I want to go to places and get these resumes of folks that we just traditionally weren't getting in. So I think, that was the impact that I was able to make. It showed, right, when you kind of started looking at just how the organization was structured, who we were bringing in, and there was no pushback. When I say no pushback, it at least within the organization that I was in, it wasn't a diversity event. It wasn't a diversity thing we were doing. We needed people. We needed people to help us deliver solutions. We needed people to help us solve these incredibly hard challenges. And we just weren't getting enough quality people in. With the authority that I had, I was able to go out now and give you a bunch of resumes. Hey, what about this stack? What about this stack? What about this stack? In addition to the stacks you're already looking at. And we started to see how the faces started to change, the people started to change, and that I think that shaped the workforce or the organization that I was in. And again, back to the pushback, nobody batted an eye. They were excited to get more people. They weren't telling me they wanted more women. That was just me. That's my conspiracy, right? That's me conspiring with Justin and others to say, hey, I want to go to this conference. Reaching out to the recruiters, can I get to this conference? I was just giving them resumes. I didn't tell them to, I didn't put a star next to it and say, that's my candidate. I was giving more resumes, more people, opening up the aperture, and we started bringing in more people and changing the face of the organization. And then when you go to that inclusion part, the equity part, we handled that, we're continually handling the equity part. I would say on an annual basis, if not, twice annually. But on the inclusion piece, that was now up to us. That was now up to our BRGs. That was now up to, the groups to help them feel included. So how do you bring them in? Do you put them as part of the orientation, right? Do you now follow up with them? If I had a hand in you getting hired, right? You'll get that email from me from day one. Look out for this person, look out for that person. I may not be able to help you. I don't know anything about that, but she can help. He can help. So just, ensuring that they're assimilated properly. If there's any hurdles that come up, seeing how you can help and staying connected with them. So, again, the sad truth is that we're never going to be done, and maybe some optimistic folks think we might be, but I just think we naturally go to what's comfortable, and sometimes focusing on DE&I is not comfortable, and I just made it a point to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and focus on it. It's not going to be comfortable for me, but I have a passion around it. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy this. So.
And that's a good point, right? It was not asking for permission, asking for forgiveness, right? We knew what we were going to do. We knew what we had to go do to change the culture. And both of us are pretty much ask for forgiveness guys, as opposed to ask for permission to go do things. And I think that has to be done to make people uncomfortable, to make progress. And I readily admit, just Friday, I think I emailed our CEO. I said, we need to focus on our strategy for women of color, for BEA, for HENAC, for all the conferences, and so while there are layers between me and him, I basically said, here are the things that we need to do. And I think in the process of doing that, there was some level of discomfort, not necessarily at his level, but for individuals, there goes that man again, there goes Justin again, right, doing that again. And I think, but that's what has to be done. We're charged with making change, and unfortunately that comes with a level of discomfort that you and I have to almost be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so I know we've talked here for a little bit. We're probably about 42 minutes in. I want to give the audience an opportunity to ask any questions they may have. I'm keeping up on the chat that we have on the StreamYard. I do have the LinkedIn going at this point in time. Are there any questions? I appreciate my employees or former employees giving me a shout out. Thank you very much. But the important thing is that y'all came in and did what I knew you were competent and could do. So only thing I was doing was giving you the exposure. You did the work to make your own very successful. And yes, so Mac, here's the funny thing, right? So I talked to Worrell, right? And I clown with him. I'm like, wait a second, you're a senior manager over Lockheed, but I took your son, right? So we brought him over to L3S, and I'd send him a message. I'm like, we have your son. So really, I met him at UF, I guess, in another one of the actual events. But he used to compete against my daughter, and I think he's online as well. So, but again, if there are any questions anybody has, feel free now. We do have about another 16 minutes left. Feel free to ask any questions you have. And again, Matt he says that he is not a DEI leader, but let's be honest, right? Leadership is not necessarily having the title, but also being the leader, the individual willing to make those, to challenge other people, to step up. So even though that might not have been your official title, sir, I contend you're about as good as a DE&I leader as anyone that I've ever worked with. So let's just make sure I clarify that. I'm not seeing any real questions Ray's talking about, he worked for us for 2 years. He just left to go back to school very, very recently. Jorge's still at Lockheed. My niece is still there at Lockheed. I'm really excited to see those individuals become the next leaders that are hiring people behind them, doing the responsibility you and I did, a number of years ago. And I think we might have a question coming on LinkedIn, but I'm checking really quickly. I think it's coming from Keith. Keith, go ahead and type fast because I see you're trying to type, but I'll delay here for a second. Any other questions? Okay.
Real quick.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you kind of talking about this next generation of leaders coming in. But that inclusion piece, we talk about diversity a lot, but I think that inclusion piece is the one that we really, really should focus on. I talked about it as we brought in more people. I really leaned on, other newer employees or recently new employees to help bring in other folks, right? When a group of level 1s, 2s, and 3s become a crew and they get to hang out after work and they get it really, it really becomes a family. I always tell people when it comes to Lockheed Martin, there's, you might have a bad manager, and this is any organization, right? You might have a bad manager and then you think the company is terrible. You might have work on a bad program and you think the, company is terrible, right? These things, the one thing that has stayed true are the people that I call friends. I now call friends. Some have escaped, gone to Harris and other organizations, but, those people keep me at Lockheed Martin. They keep me centered, they keep me honest. I've transitioned from, entry level 1, level 2 to now being a husband and, right before a lot of people's eyes. Right. So we really lean on folks to really bring in those who are quiet, bring in those who might not feel like they've kind of inserted themselves into the corporation. They're racing to get off at the end of the day. And it's just because they don't feel like they have a place yet. So even if you're a level 2, level 3, you don't have to be a manager. You don't have to do the hiring, but you can play a big part in making it family for, the new hires, no matter what their background is. So that way they feel like this is a place where they can not only, it's not only about growing your career, but you can also grow as an individual, grow as a person.
That's excellent. There's a question in the comment, but I got to point out. I think it was one point we hired so many students from FIU. I remember going to an event they had. I was like, goodness gracious, you're shutting down the whole restaurant. How many people we didn't hire from FIU? And I joked, but it was at a point where I can't remember which restaurant it was, but I was just like, wow, you're pretty much shutting down the restaurant. But they had all banded together and became a subculture and family that was supportive of each other. So, I think that's an excellent point. I do have a question from Neville. Neville is asking, what's the biggest future hurdle you see? And I kind of had a similar question in there. But what's the future hurdle that, from a D&I perspective, that we need to tackle?
So you want me to take that? I was going to give it to you, and you talk about where you're at. Biggest future hurdle that we need to tackle. I'm still going to go back to inclusion, man. Equity. Again, I might be the pessimist. There are optimists out there. Equity, we're going to always work towards it. We can always get better. I think in today's climate, we saw it in 2020, where there's just a lot more that are visible. A lot of things become louder because of recordings and leaks and all that stuff. Something that in the grand scheme of things might seem small, might become very big, right? And it might affect employees differently. I had to shut out, and I remember last year I had to shut off lots of people that I followed on social media because they were sharing the same types of videos. And not saying that the videos weren't important, but it does something to you to wake up in the morning, try to get ready to work and see another black man, something's happened to them, or another person or another woman that something has happened to them, right? Even if these are onesie twosies, it does something to you. It affects you, and when you don't have someone to talk to about it, especially someone at work, that can just help you focus help you center yourself. We're still, we still got a mission, we still got a job to do, but we can still talk about these things. You can still bring me in, I can bring you in. These things are going to continue to be hurdles, and I just think inclusion is going to be a big. I think we can work on diversity. I think we know how to kind of get our arms around diversity. We can work on equity. There are seasoned professionals that is their job. We have lawyers, we have HR professionals, we have folks who are really going out and figuring out what is the right thing to do and doing those things, especially within Lockheed Martin. But as far as inclusion go, that is us. That is every single one of us, right? You don't need to be a manager. How do you bring somebody in? How do you ensure that, hey, if this person might be affected by that thing, right? That happened in his hometown, that happened in her hometown. They might feel down, right? Figuring out how to bring them in, send them resources, right? Encourage them. Inclusion is going to be a big thing. I don't know, what the horizon looks like, but it's going to continue to be a big thing because of just the way, the nature is, the way social media works, the way things work is going to be I think a big challenge for all of us.
So the next question came from LinkedIn, and Keith, I'm gonna get you for this one. Did either of you, and I think you kind of answered this a little bit at the same time, Mac, but I'll ask it again. Did either of you run into any opposition when promoting DE&I from any of your peers or colleagues? Did anyone ever question the strategy that both executed to diversify your respective campuses? And if you have an answer to that, I'll defer to you, but I actually have one too if you so choose to send that back over to me.
I know you have a good answer. I'll just give a brief example without giving names. I have had oppositions. I've actually, I think, Keith, thank you for the question, first of all, Keith. We go way back as well, right? I just think about the folks that have come through LM, specifically TLS. I thought TLS, GTS, STS, whatever we were called at the time, is probably the most hip business within Lockheed Martin. We bring in a lot of engineers. They get their footing and they do some awesome things around the business. But I've had oppositions. And the funny thing is sometimes I've had even oppositions from folks who look like me, those that I thought would be the supporters, and then I'd have to worry about other types of oppositions. I've had opposition, but again, it's about passion, right? And I can give everybody a cheat code. I know your answer is going to be different, Justin. You're a lot more strategic than I am, but if you ever talk to me, I always performance comes first. I value people. I value a lot of different things, but I also have to ensure that what I'm doing, I'm being the best at what it is that, I am on the job for, what my role, calls for me to do. And I think when you focus on performance, your performance, lots of doors open for you, because you start to become, not necessarily a role model, right? Because we're talking about leadership, we're talking about other managers, not a role model, but you start to become an example of what it's like to find that kid who didn't know about Lockheed Martin until he bumped into him at a career fair. Never heard about him. My mom. Until she passed away, I remember she used to think I was a mechanic because I got a mechanical engineering degree, undergrad. So didn't quite understand what engineering was. My family didn't provide that much support just because we were an immigrant family, didn't quite understand it. So you can bring in somebody who doesn't have that ideal background, doesn't come from the ideal upbringing, and still bring them into Lockheed Martin, and they'll give you 110%, help you work on some of your hardest problems, and help you get things done, right? So I always rooted myself on performance, and that performance would then open doors that allowed me to say, hey, I also care about diversity and inclusion, right? I care about ALF, ACE, and now BEC. I care about this organization. I'm going to support this organization. Can I do some recruiting? Can I, help shape the workforce, as we talked about earlier? When you do the performance, when you do your job, what you have to do, there might be hurdles. There might be people that give you pushback. That's fine. but those that matter, those that actually have the most influence, will see what you're doing and they will trust you. You'll build that influence and you'll build that trust to start to make those, shape the organization and make those changes that you want to see in the organization. So you will continue to get pushback. That's fine. But I promise you, if you are doing what you got to do, performance, right? You're doing what you got to do, performance first, delivering results, as we would say. You'll start to see how doors will open up for you, and how you'll be, you start to get a lot more latitude, and you have a lot more leverage to start to, shape the business.
And I appreciate that, because you've said that. So you've stood by your message for as long as I've known you, right? Of doing your job, right? I don't want to you as the coach, but do your job, right? If you listen, if you watch football, you know what I'm talking about. But I will tell you, and I have had pushback, right? And I think what for me it became being the face of the organization, the ERG. When it came to events that happened in society, whether it was George Floyd or there was another event in terms of something happened where it had to be addressed, right? And I've known people who are at L3 Harris know that my messages, they don't get pushed through corporate before they go out to our 1,500, employees that we have within our lead organization. So my message is a lot more direct. It's a lot more to the point, and I understand that I can make people uncomfortable. And I've heard some of the conversations in lieu of the discomfort that I've given people, but they still need to be said. Right, and I understand that part of the responsibility of the chairperson for this organization is saying things that need to be said, even though it may be uncomfortable saying them. So I agree, Mac. I totally agree that putting your best foot forward and making sure that you're doing your job and meeting your commitments is critically important. But for me, even beyond the actual technical work, there is a responsibility as the chairperson for the L3 Harris Employees of African Descent, where I have to say things that are on people's minds, that are uncomfortable, or they may not be willing to say. And I think a number of people have been a lot more comfortable about saying them because of the fact the entire lead organization has been one willing to say some of the things that people are thinking, but initially may have not been comfortable saying. So I agree. I think the pushback is just me and the organization saying things that it's like, well, when I say, well, he was able to say that, or they were able to do that, and I don't want to use the word they as in that tense, but it's things that just weren't comfortable that were being addressed. So there was pushback in regards to that. So there's one more question. I'll take this last question that comes from Lisa. What was your motivation to take initiative and challenge the norm in a career field where minority presence isn't big? I think that's an excellent question. And Mac, do you want to take that one?
Sure.
Yep, I'll take a stab at it. And again, follow it up as you may. I would say motivation for me is always, and you know what, we're talking about DNI. This is how I've been in my career. Motivation for me has always been, if not me, then who? I ask myself over and over, right? Whenever you see yourself not going for something, not taking something, I always say, if not me, then who? Sometimes you'll have an answer for the then who. If you don't like the then who, then that's even more reason for you to do it. I always ask myself that question. So when it comes to, again, having an opportunity to be empowered to shape a workforce, to help, and again, to shape a workforce. Selfish me, I get to go out to these conferences and meet awesome students, but that is a business imperative. That's like, hey, trust me, there's a big staffing hole on the other end of that. There's a room full of directors and vice presidents talking about, why don't I have enough people to staff this program. There's a big business imperative on the other end of that, right? So when I see this opportunity, when I know what I'm passionate about, what I care about, when I know I am the best suited to step foot in FAMU, I'm the best suited to go to North Carolina A&T. I know I am. I know I can inspire those students. I know I can let those students know what the opportunity looks like for them, right? So when I feel like that's who I am, that's, I can do it better than anybody else, I go for it. So that's always been the motivation. I ask myself that question, and a lot of times I did not actually have an answer. I did not have an answer for somebody who was a manager who looked like me, who would be willing to go to the ACES conference, who would be willing to go to NESB, to Bea, right? I didn't have answers for that. Who'd be willing to, we used to have a Black affinity group. It was called Epiphany, based out of Orlando. That was actually run out of EO. The folks at E6, the great folks like Worrell, put me on to that early. We didn't have one in GTS or GTL or STS at the time. There wasn't one in our business. We had to basically lean on them. All the events that they put together for the Black, the Black affinity group, we would attend with them. I remember asking, why didn't we have it, right? I met with a lot of people, including African American executives, who were just like, nah, we don't need it. Let them do it, right? That's where I was just like, I learned that, hey, if not me, then who? Because I knew we were going to have a wave of employees starting, a wave of employees that needed a home, that needed a family, that needed somebody to tell them, what barbershop to go to, or to go to the Florida Classic with, right, as an actual outing, as opposed to like a golf scramble, right? I knew we needed something like that, so I went and did it because I knew nobody else would do it, right? So it was really just about being deliberate about seeing change that I want to see, and again, ask yourself the question: if it's a new job, if it's a managerial job, that you would report to that person, right? If not you, then who, right? Go for it, and if it doesn't happen, that's fine, but at least you can know you tried.
And I'm not going to tag on to that because I think that was perfectly put. I just like the fact that now I can say, hey, get my program staff, right? I like being the individual saying, hey, we need more people on these programs. I need to have it done by next week. And I surprisingly did that earlier today. So, but it's being able to say that and saying we need to make sure that we have a diverse population as well. So I think to your point is that you're being the change that you wanted to see. And it wasn't necessarily that you had to go find some motivation per se. You were being the change that you wanted to see. So I want to take the time, Mack. I know we're a couple minutes over. I appreciate you jumping on the CFF Live with me. It's been a great opportunity to talk to you. I want to give you a minute or two if you had some additional parting thoughts or things that you wanted to say to the audience.
I think I've said everything I wanted to say. This is a great conversation. Thank you very much, Justin. Justin talked about the foundation organization. Please check it out if you haven't. Great event. The 5K was awesome. But yeah, check it out if you haven't. Great cause. I don't know if you recall, but my first. So Corey Weathers invited me to play flag football, not in the intramural, but actually in the city. I think Winter Springs, when I first moved to somewhere off of Tuscaloosa, when I first moved to Orlando, right? That's kind of like, another employee inviting me in to do something different than work. And Puff, Robert, who I know your organization strongly supports, he was one of my first teammates. So a great organization, great cause, great people. Please support it if you can. But again, we talked about if not you, then who, right? Start, ask yourself that question, right? Make the change that you want to make. There's a lot of opportunity. I see names in the crowd. I won't mention them. One specifically, Mo. That's fine. When you're ready to come back to Lockheed Martin, just give me a call. We'll talk about that. But I won't post.
He ain't going nowhere. He's stuck with me.
But like I said, lastly, really enjoyed this conversation. A lot of crazy things going on in this world. Even more important for you to really look at who's around you, check your biases, check what you think you might understand, and know that there might be some people that's looking for someone to just include them, bring them in. Pray for Haiti. There's a lot of stuff going on. Pray for Afghanistan. Pray for Nigeria. I think there's flooding out there. There's a lot of crazy things going on in this world. That does translate into work, right? If you feel down, if you feel depressed, I talked about having to shut off some of my Instagram. If you feel, because I just couldn't feel bad every single morning, getting myself ready to work. There's a lot of crazy things going on. So try to, it's a very tough thing. So try to just hold everybody tight and help others out. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Yes, and I appreciate it. And again, thank you everybody for your time. Please donate. I did drop the link in the chat, cff-inc.org/donate. We're going to have some other donation activities, looking at doing potentially a golf tournament in the future, obviously as COVID permits. But we're going to be doing a lot more things. The 5K, thank you for the call out. But yes, the donations that you provide really go to our students. They go to both the collegiate students as well as the ones at the grade school level. So thank you again for your time. Mack, thank you for joining us today. Everybody have a great day or evening, and be safe out there.